Remember that this research question was looking at early parenthood. And essentially, if you become a parent early on, are you going to do better or resolve this crisis of intimacy and generativity better than somebody who goes through parenthood later? And similar to what we found on the last slide or with the other research question, we find more results for generativity here and not for intimacy. So there were no differences between early or later parenthood on intimacy. But for generativity, those who became parents after 31, and I imagine like going back to the 40s and 50s, and now maybe 50s, 60s when they were 31, this was older. Now many people are becoming parents after the age of 31. But again, going back in time, those who became parents after 31 were initially lower in generativity scores. Remember that generativity is this idea of I'm making a difference on the world, like I am doing good. However, the individuals who, again, became parents after 31, these individuals showed gains like over time until by their 50s, and they slightly exceeded those on generativity than those who had become parents early. So it's the same type of finding as intimacy on the last slide, that not only do, we find that, meeting this milestone early on in life isn't necessarily needed. Like generativity scores are growing over time, and by having children later, and this, again, you could do this, fulfill this by work or by family life, then you can actually exceed those who had become, and achieve this milestone and become parents earlier. But again, I think that these findings are really positive in showing how much we are growing, again, in these psychosocial domains over time. Although this wasn't part of their main research questions, and nor are these stages that I'm going to talk about just right now the normal part of adulthood, whether that's early adulthood or midlife, but they also found some interesting findings. So Erickson's stage theory also includes these earlier stages that we didn't really talk about in this class, but starting in infancy, developing trust, toddlerhood, this ability like that, yes, I can do things on my own, and so on. And what this study that we were just talking about also found is that trust, autonomy, and initiative, like going out and being able to do things, all of these are really associated with early childhood. But when they looked at it in this cohort data, this longitudinal data, they found that individuals were still growing in these domains, and growth continued through their mid 50s. I as a developmental psychologist, this doesn't surprise me in the sense that we know that we can be affected by our lives around us. So when we think about trust and the different relationships and the people that come in and out of our lives, obviously we're going to have lots of different experiences that can shape our trust levels. Autonomy, being able to like do things for yourself and think for yourself, yeah, that's not going to just suddenly turn off at the age of 3. In fact, we talked about autonomy and adolescence and how it changes quite substantially. Initiative, this idea that like, yeah, I feel like I can do things independently, and I can take charge and be effective in those way. Again, certainly is not stopping at any given age. This all attests to this idea that Erickson is is a great addition to the field of psychology because of these early ideas that we needed in order to, to test them. Like we have to have ideas before we can test them. It's just as problematic because it's saying that, this is a stage theory and you have to get through one stage before moving into the next stage. As a whole, though, I think this is just positive because it's talking about growth. It's not talking about decline. This research is showing that, like, we're making improvements in these areas well into middle age. And I just think as a whole that that's really a positive thing to think about, these positive changes that are happening in our lives well into this period in the lifespan. All right, but Now we're going to switch gears and talk about some personality changes that occur in midlife. If you find that you are particularly interested in what I talk about on the next couple of slides, I highly encourage you to take Dr. Williamson's personality class. I think it's like 322, don't quote me on that. Because he'll talk a lot about personality traits, but also some really interesting findings on how they change over the lifespan. His course is certainly not going to be a developmental class, but it will touch upon different developmental concepts. So again, if you're interested in these topics, I highly encourage you to take his course.